Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to the sheep pen, bah, where no goats are allowed. So today we're going to talk about PDF files. We're going to talk about cheese pizza, grape soda, hot dogs. No, this isn't about Adobe Acrobat files about food. We're talking about secret codes of the elite, what has been uncovered in the Epstein files, and the history of sacrifice to alien deities that the Bible calls other gods. Before we get into all of that, though, I want to thank all of you who support the channel with your kind financial gifts. You know, I've been playing it safe with some of this stuff. I've been skirting around the subjects, talking about anything but some of the topics that I'm talking about now. And I got convicted. The Holy Spirit convicted me. And last week, I came out with a video that I suspected would be the end of my channel, potentially. But you know, just like the story I told at the beginning of that video about the preacher's wife wringing her hands thinking that the Christian rock concert was going to be the thing that got them voted out. You know, that was a big concert we threw. She was scared to death that, you know, it was going to get her voted out because we were bringing Christian rock into this church. And I never finished that story in the last video, but not only were her concerns unfounded, but we rocked that place that night. Kids from all over the city came there, and that one concert sparked a youth revival that brought tons of fruit into ministries throughout that city. So it was a life-changing moment. But had she given into fear, that concert never would have happened. And you know, I was giving into fear talking about some of this stuff here because, you know, my life's work for the last 8.5 years is on this channel, almost to be 9 years this summer. And the thought of it being deleted with a click, you know, was having me play it safe. The fear of losing subscribers or losing financial backers was holding me back. But, you know, I'm pushing past that. I'm going to start talking more and more about the difficult topics, the things that could, you know, that are shunned, things that are trying to be erased and covered up and held back. And I'm going to continue to risk it. And I want to thank all of you who proved my fears unfounded last week because I had a nice outpouring of gifts. And I want to thank all of you who support this channel through your kind financial gifts. It lets me know the direction I'm going is the right one. And I got a positive vote from viewers last week on the topic that I covered last week. And I'm going to continue with that trend now as we talk about some of the more difficult and distasteful things that are going on in the world today. So back a few years back at the beginning of this channel in 2017, 2018, any of us who talked about the things that are now being openly discussed because of the Epstein file release, we were looked at as conspiracy theorists, nuts, people that were spreading false, false information. We were demonized. Many of our channels were deleted. Well, I was given strikes for talking about such things. But now, apparently, they've lifted that. And maybe it's because the left hopes this is going to smear Donald Trump, and therefore YouTube has lifted its restrictions. It could be that it's getting so big now you can't hide the fact that elites in our government, in politics, in finance, in high tech, in Hollywood, and in the music business are engaging in behavior that is criminal. They're engaging in behavior that is deplorable. The very worst of the worst. Literal demonic, satanic behavior and activities. And it appears that there's a massive cover-up. And I can even say whether it was at Donald Trump's personal direction or Pam Bondi's own fear, but we can see that the Epstein files were never meant to see the light of day. The very first release of the Epstein files was supposed to be the big bomb. It was President Trump, you know, keeping his campaign promise to make the Epstein files public. And Pam Bondi handed out those folders to Mike Cernovich and, you know, Laura Loomer and some other people like that. And the thing that they released was just some stuff that had already been released, and they were hoping they were going to take their little file and go, yay, see, we're special, and go away. But To me, that's evidence of an attempt to cover this up. That was not a full disclosure. Even this last full disclosure of 3 million documents is still 3.5 million documents short. Pam Bondi's and others will say there's nothing left but disgusting things that the American people can't see, and we can't be spreading, the existence of these images and videos, and that's what they're hiding. But the fact of the matter is, powerful people have a lot to lose by not only what's left in the Epstein files, but many of them have been hurt by what's already been released in the Epstein files. And before we had the Epstein files, we had the Podesta emails and the Hillary Clinton emails. Emails and information existed on Hillary Clinton's private server that were so damaging to her politically and even potentially criminally that she destroyed evidence under a subpoena when she bleached, they call it bleach, but when she destroyed the hard drives from her home server that was an illegal server for her to be using for government offices when she was a Secretary of State. And there was evidence. Many believe there was evidence of the very thing that was going on in the Epstein files. Evidence that could potentially land her in prison and put her and her husband Bill Clinton at the very center of one of the worst and most devastating conspiracies that turned out to be fact, not theory, concerning child trafficking and the disgusting destruction of innocence that is something that we're beginning to understand is a part of life for many of the rich and famous. Now, you know that I had my true crossroads moment. If you haven't seen that video, please look it up. It was called My True Crossroads. I think My True Crossroads Story. And the story of the crossroads goes back to, Robert Johnson, who supposedly met the devil at the crossroads, sold his soul to the devil. Part of that Faustian mythology from the Faustian story. You can look that up. That goes back hundreds of years. But it's kind of a retelling of the Faustian story, where a man sells his soul to the devil for something: riches, wealth, fame, in the case of Robert Johnson, talent. And it is very interesting that Robert Johnson couldn't play his way out of a paper bag, went away for a few months, disappeared, came back, and was such a brilliant guitar player that he almost single-handedly gave birth to what we now know as rock and roll. And in my story, coming up as a young musician, very young musician, barely old enough to be in the bar, I was approached, and this story can be seen on a video called My True Crossroads Story. You just Google that with Sage Wanderer, and we'll do a YouTube search, and you should get the video pop right up for you. But in that, they wanted me to turn my back on God. They wanted me to turn my back on my faith. They wanted me to accept whatever religion they told me to accept. And I needed to denounce Christ because rock and roll and Christianity don't go together, is what this representative of the elites told me. And in that, they offered me anything I wanted, anything, even the most depraved things. They literally offered me access to the very thing that Epstein was as accused of being involved in. Okay, I got to be careful with my words, right? I'm trying to minimize the impact or the attention that I might get from the algorithms. I didn't survive 9 years nearly of this by being stupid. We can talk about it somewhat, but I still have to speak in code. And so, they offered me pizza and hot dogs. They offered me the hunt. They offered me jerky, whatever you want to call this, using their own code words. They offered me the most unimaginable things. And all I had to do was denounce Christ. It was very much like the temptation of Jesus when Satan takes him to the mountaintop and says, everything and anything you want, all power, all wealth, all of it is available to you if you'll just bow down and worship me. This is an offer that is given to anyone who is trying to work their way up past a certain point, whether it's in the music business, in television, radio, movies. That's where you get the most whistleblowers, but there are whistleblowers coming out of high tech and finance and politics. who say the deal was floated to them as well. You know, we'll give you whatever depravity and evil thing you want as long as you play ball and do things our way. And that Epstein apparently was one of the procurers. And a lot of stuff is coming out of, if you think it's over, it's taking time for people to sift through. For instance, an email sent to Jeffrey Epstein Jeffrey Epstein sent rather to a United Arab Emirates sheikh, thanking him for the torture video. So the butler to Epstein is now talking about how he personally witnessed the proliferation and spreading of child porn pictures, right? And that was a part of Jeffrey Epstein's life. And of course, according to Bondi, that's all that's left. And the 3 million is these deplorable images. That's the other 3 million documents. Must be that many. It could be. I don't know. I just know there is this effort to cover this up, to dim it down. It's been going on since we first started talking about this almost 10 years ago. You know, there are whistleblowers coming out saying that they were kept in cages on Epstein Island, that they witnessed horrible, horrific things. There's been rock stars that have come out and said, hey, I played a party for the elites where they brought it. Now, this is a member of the rock band, the Scorpions, out of Germany. Remember the Scorpions from the 80s? You know, a couple of guys in that band have come out and openly told a story of being hired to play at one of these big elite parties where they brought a young woman out and ended her life in a ritualistic sacrifice, and they were witness to it. There have been survivors who claim that they have been sold like cattle. You know, there was a video that came out before all the censorship happened. It very much looked like John Podesta, you know, a close consort with Hillary Clinton, taunting a young child in a cage. Can't prove that was him. Once again, there's all of this information, and you might ask yourself, why are they not arresting people? Why are they not prosecuting them? Because just because you hear about it, just because somebody says it's true, doesn't mean it's enough to get a conviction. Right? What you know and what you can prove are two different things. That there's lots of evidence to suggest that this is going on at the very highest levels of government, finance, the music business, that the most depraved and satanic and evil things are happening. Whether it's a form of ritual, which is often reported the case, that these are religious rituals tied to Baal and Moloch, and these ancient deities that required human sacrifice, and that these are religious sacrifices that are part of the satanic elite religion. But then they're just the evil hearts of men who want to do despicable things. And because they have towed the line for the New World Order, because they're there gatekeeping, they're there holding up the lies, they're there continuing to keep their secrets, then they feel privileged to be allowed to behave in ways where if the common man knew of it, they would be executed for their crimes. But yet they operate in the semi-open. You know, this goes back centuries, thousands of years. The Old Testament is filled with times when not only was this kind of ritualistic sacrifice to satanic deities commonplace, it was part of protocol. It was part of government. It was part of the culture. It's something that everyone in certain cultures participated in. And in Israel, in the Bible, at times, the entire nation of Israel would give in to these cults of human sacrifice, and they would engage in these terrible rituals. The Bible tells people not to give their children for sacrifice. So child sacrifice was a part of the ancient world, and it has persisted. And why would you be shocked that it has persisted to common times, to today, to modern times? If nobody eradicates it, it's going to survive, right? If it keeps being done in secret, sooner or later, it's going to come to the surface and take control of a society. It's what it always does. You know, we are told we battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of wickedness in high places. But the phrase in high places, do you know the root of that phrase? It refers to these locations where these sacrifices would take place. When they worshiped these ancient alien deities, they would set up their places of worship on high points, on high places. I guess presumably to get closer to the source of their deity, to rise above humanity to a high place. And so these high places were torn down by different heroes throughout the Bible. You know, I had a band record in my studio back in the day when I was recording Christian music, and their band name was Josiah's Reign. And I realized I didn't know much about Josiah, so I looked it up. And he was a leader in Israel who came to power with the mission of tearing down the high places, tearing down these places of worship and sacrifice. And he was able to restore the original faith back to the Jewish people by taking out and oftentimes executing the leaders of these terrible cults of murder and human sacrifice. So this has persisted. It's stayed undercover. It's a combination of them literally worshiping Baal and Moloch. Well, if you heard of the Grove, right? Bohemian Grove, that this is where world leaders and people of power meet to make plans for the future. And as part of that, they do a mock human sacrifice in front of a Moloch owl, the size of a skyscraper. Like a multi-story god that they worship in this mock, and they have a mock human sacrifice. You know, there was a lot more information available about these topics. Many more people talking about them before the Great Purge of 2018 on the internet. Then in 2018, channels a lot like this one were taken down. It's why I fell back from it. It's why I started talking in code. It's why I changed the subject, because to speak about it was to get your channel deleted. See, there's a massive cover up. This cover up is permeating Hollywood, the news business, finance, music business, and our own government. It's a government cover up. It's a business cover up, because so many of the high end leaders in the world have given in to this behavior. You know, one of the things I learned from exorcism is that if there's one thing that demons truly, truly hate, it's children. Demons target children. This is why multi-generational child abuse is so common in the world, because there are demons that specialize in this, and they target children so that they can induce pain and agony on them, destroying them in their youth, so that A, they can't ever become anything, and B, they'll make sure and pass on the pain to the next generation, and it spreads like a cancer. You know, I spent time as a priest, and I took confessions, and I was utterly shocked at the widespread cases of child abuse, that most everyone I encountered were victims of child abuse. And between that and what I heard straight from the demons' mouths during exorcisms, demons hate children. And so when people sell their soul for rock and roll, when people sign on the dotted line to give up their spirit for fame and fortune and money and success, then it allows these demons to take control of them. They become the habitation of demons. They think, okay, so I sold my soul, so what does it matter? Now I can do whatever evil thing I want. And those demons that hate children are right there pushing it on these people, because they've turned their back on God. They've turned their back on their own humanity. They sold themselves for money. They sold themselves for power. So now there's nothing standing between them and these demons that hate children. Of course, they're torturing them. Of course, they're sexually assaulting them. Of course, these coded messages, jerky, okay, they're not talking about a salty snack here. When these elites in the Epstein files talk about exchanging jerky, shipping jerky back and forth, they're talking about trafficking in human flesh, both living and non-living. That cannibalism is part of this. When you have sold your soul to the devil, what does it matter? You can do whatever you want. You can try any depraved thing. You can, acquire a taste for it. You can become addicted to it. Let me tell you, jerky doesn't need to be kept in the freezer. If you've been reading the Epstein files, they're talking about exchanging these packages of jerky that have to be on ice. You see, they can't just come straight out and go, "Hey, can I send you some people meat over?" Right? They gotta have a coded message. They don't, they any of y'all ever engage in any shady criminal behavior in your teen years? Maybe you bought some of that wacky tobacco. You wouldn't say, "Hey, can I get a," and then name it. You'd be like, "Hey, can I get some green stuff?" Right? Can I get some herbage? Right? You didn't come right out and say it. There was a coded message that exists amongst anyone who involves themselves in something illegal. And hot dogs and pizza and grape soda and jerky, these are all coded messages for the most evil and disgusting use of humans that you've ever seen in your life. The total hatred of children, especially the younger and the more innocent. And this is something that I really wanted to make this channel about exposing this and talking about it, but I got shoved back into the closet of fear because people dropped like flies around me for talking about this kind of stuff just, 9 years ago, 8-9 years ago. And the Great Purge of 2018 took out so many channels. People put their lives, effort into them. And, I'm a survivor because I've kind of used a code myself, I'm using their code now that I think is not so much code anymore. It's enough to confuse the algorithm. There are certain things you can't say. And I've already used some of the words. This message could be taken down. I could get a strike. I could be removed permanently from YouTube and 9 years of work deleted with a single click. But this is how much they don't want this information out. They're willing to destroy lives. They're willing to lie, cheat, steal, cover it up, make up lies, release stuff. Release that package that Bondi passed out right after President Trump was inaugurated for his second term. Well, here it is. This is the big Epstein file. And it was a nothing burger, right? We've had to drag this stuff out of them. If it wasn't for people like Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert, pushing and getting people on both sides of the aisle to go over the heads of the people in power to get this stuff released. I'm telling you, Donald Trump may have ran on releasing this, but he is not happy about it. And, of course, the left says it's because, he's involved in it. And I will say this, he may not be involved in it directly, right? But it's clear to me that he fears the backlash of the truth coming out. Some people are saying that if the truth came out about who and are involved in this and exactly what it is they're doing, these elites, these rich and wealthy, evil people that sold their soul to the devil for power and money, the things that they indulge in, the things they celebrate with each other, the things they do at their parties, like the ones the Scorpion Band was at. And I've heard story after story, survivors talking about how they got out. I met somebody in the course of this ministry who claims he was kept in a cage and abused by a powerful actor who I will not name because they'll sue you. What you know and what you can prove are two different things. There's definitely a war to keep this evil conspiracy of hate for children and the destructive satanic rituals these people engage in. There is a campaign to keep it quiet. And whether the people that are keeping it quiet are keeping it quiet for their own benefit or to keep stability. But some have argued that if this came out, the economies would crash. So, and I do want to answer one of my viewers who sent me an email about how angry they are about all this. And I never answered back to the email. And I want you to know, Craig, I'm not ignoring you. I made this video kind of to address this. This stuff has been going on since the beginning of time. It was happening while Jesus walked the earth. And Jesus didn't spend a lot of time talking about it. And as I was preparing to go into a new stage of talking about this stuff more openly, and I'll fall short of calling myself a campaigner against it, right? I mean, who wouldn't be against it? But, I'm not committing the channel to this completely, but it's got to be a part of what I talk about. But I looked back, and what did Jesus talk about? Because this was happening in his lifetime. He was fully aware of the depths of the evilness that was not just there in front of him, but around the world. The Roman Empire was one of the most evil empires to ever occupy the planet. And Jesus spent very little time talking about that. Because here's the thing. We battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of wickedness in high places. And the better use of our time as Christians is spreading the gospel to each individual, insulating us all to the evil that's out there, making sure it doesn't get a hold of your brother, your sister, your friend, your family, your neighbor. That Jesus taught of the personal battle against evil because he understood that the battle happens in the hearts of men, not in the court of public opinion. I'm against, obviously, this kind of behavior. It's horrible. Anybody caught involved in it should be prosecuted to the highest extent of the law. But at the same time, as a spiritual man, I know that the best thing I can do is to continue to spread the gospel, to continue to insulate people, but also educate people. So, I think the biggest way they get away with this behavior is by convincing normal people that it's not real. Who would do that? They're crazy. That's not real. That's so far-fetched. Despite hundreds of survivors testifying to being hunted in the woods for sport by the rich, to being kept in cages by the rich and powerful. Within the Epstein files, there's an email that references how there's two young ladies buried somewhere on Epstein's New Mexico ranch because they were killed by asphyxiation during rough intercourse, right, while being trafficked by Epstein. And so this stuff is horrible. It needs to be dealt with. But at the same time, what can we do? The main thing we can do is to fight the good fight, to fight, yes, spread the word, blow the whistle, let people know it's out there. We need to put an end to this because it's far-fetched, it must not be true attitude that's out there. Because that's what we ran into when we first brought Epstein up. Oh, that's ridiculous. Nobody's doing that. You guys are crazy. Pizzagate, Pizzafy, what are you talking about? Cosmic ping pong pizza? What do you mean? Tunnels connecting businesses with Washington Capitol in the White House. Y'all are insane. But this stuff is now coming to the forefront. People are talking about it. It just because it's crazy doesn't mean it's not true. And there's not much that the average person can do about it. Yeah, does it make you angry? We're not in the position of power. It's our job to insulate our own people. It's our job to share the gospel. It's our job to shine a light. Can we do something about it? I think we lack the power. I think the conspiracy is so widespread and so deeply entrenched that you won't ever shake it out. It'll just move because we battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of wickedness in high places. The best thing you can do is fight the devil in your own backyard. Fight the devil in your family. Fight the devil when he's trying to come against your mind, your spirit, your soul. Fight within your community. Think globally, but act locally. And ultimately, you can't give up the fight to try to go after this bigger evil, right? It's too big. It's too big to fail. It involves too many powerful people. What are some things you can do? Well, you cannot play ball with these people. That'll help. Don't buy their products. Assume anybody that's in a high level of government, anybody that's in high level of finance, anybody that's in high level of entertainment, even if you really like them, even if you think the world of them, they're either involved in it or they're turning a blind eye to it, because you don't get there unless you take the deal. This is what I know from my own crossroads moment. Unless you kiss the ring, unless you take the deal, unless you drink the blood, you are not going to get promoted. So I don't care how much you like somebody who's, if they're rich, if they're powerful, if they're famous, they sold their soul to the devil to get there, because that's the only way you get brought into that club. And that's the cold, hard truth. Tell me what you think in the comments section. I'm all for boycotting name brands. I'm all for boycotting music and movies and everything else that's being produced by these people who are engaging in these depravities. But that's about all we can do. That, talk about it, educate people, let them know what's going on, and let them know that when you chase fame, when you chase fortune, you're asking to be led into a club where this kind of behavior is not just normalized, it's part of club activities. Tell me what you think in the comments section. We'll see you next time on the Sheep Pen. Don't forget to support the channel. Links in the description below.